Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Week number 13, National Football League. Thanksgiving football action. Our second matchup of the day. And all I was hoping at this point was that the second game was much better than the first. And as you'll find, during Thanksgiving, the games got better gradually as the day progressed. So we find ourselves in the second matchup, Cowboys at home versus the Oakland Raiders. And like I said before, Cowboys, Lions, both stalwarts of our Thanksgiving football action. They're teams that play annually on Thanksgiving. They get the home games, and that's the way that it should be. They've been doing that for years, and I hope they continue to do that for as long as I'm watching football. And so, Cowboys at home versus the Raiders. This seems like an easy layup for the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. This was my sole survivor pick of week number 13. No way the Cowboys lose at home to the Oakland Raiders. Raiders coming off of a loss at home, and a huge one at that, versus the Tennessee Titans in a game that really could have seen the Raiders do some serious damage and put them in the driver's seat in the AFC wildcard picture. Instead, they lose that game. Tennessee comes into their building, gets a win, and now the Raiders are kind of reeling. But in all of the happenings of the last couple of weeks, the Raiders might have found themselves a quarterback in Matt McGloin, the undrafted prospect out of Penn State. So here's another opportunity for Matthew McGloin to show what he can do on the big stage. Thursday, Thanksgiving action, only football game on the screen at this time, primetime action. He's got an opportunity to prove that he belongs in this league. Let's see how he'll handle the spotlight of being on national television. You look at the Cowboys, they come into this game winners of their last matchup. They haven't won consecutive games all season, if I'm not mistaken, in Big D. And they come off of a win against the Giants, a big win on the road that sees them at 6-5 atop the division with the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's an opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys to really make some noise and do some really serious damage, like getting to 7-5 and putting that pressure on the Eagles, who have the Cardinals coming into their building on Sunday, and that's a huge game. The Cardinals are playing hot football, and that's going to be a real test for Nicholas Foles and that Eagles team. So if Dallas can get this win, not only is it a huge win that will put them on top of this division by themselves at 7-5, but they've got 11 days until their next game. So essentially, you're getting a mini bye week, and you don't play until Monday Night Football against the Chicago Bears. So you get an extra day. Maybe a guy like Sean Lee will be back from his injury after that long layoff. So if you're the Cowboys, get this win, and you've got a lot of time to lick your wounds and prepare for your next opponent. So this is a huge game for the Dallas Cowboys. So off to the action we go. No big board again. I wasn't taking any notes. I was just taking it all in, food included, but I was just taking in the scenery, the family, the friends, the football, the whole shebang. So no notes, but I got it committed to memory. You know how I do this here in the lab room. So they kick the football off. Dallas Cowboys get the football first. No Dwayne Harris in this game. So they have Terrence Williams, the young rookie out of Baylor, back there returning kicks. And he comes flying out of the end zone. He gets bottled up around the 20-yard line. And all of a sudden, the ball comes free. And you just see the ball laying on the ground. It's scooped up by the Oakland Raiders, ran into the end zone. They have to review to make sure it wasn't down by contact. He wasn't down before the ball came out. It was a little dicey. I think that if the call on the field was no fumble, then it would have stayed no fumble. But because the call on the field was fumble and touchdown, they left it as is. It's a touchdown. It was close. I thought it was a fumble. I thought the ball was moving before the knee hit down. My dad, huge Cowboys fan. Sister, huge Cowboys fan. We're both arguing that the knee was down and the ball was not out yet. But it's not when the ball comes out. It's when it starts to move. And again, Kevin Burnett had his hand in there to rip it out, and the ball was already moving. It wasn't out, but it was moving before the knee hit down, so I think it was a good call. And again, the evidence wasn't overwhelming enough to overturn it. Whatever the call was on the field, it was going to remain that way, and that's what happened on that play. Raiders take an immediate opening lead of 7-0 in this game. And I tell you what, if you're a Cowboys fan, and I was telling my dad and my sister this, that's the worst thing that could have happened to you in this game. And I said, look, for me, it was great because I just want to see a good game at this point. I could care less. I picked the Cowboys, and they're my sole survivor pick, so I actually don't want them to lose this game because I've got a lot riding on this. I picked them in my football pool, I picked them on the show, and they're my sole survivor pick for the week. So that's a triple whammy for me if they don't get it done. So the Redskins fan in me wasn't saying, hey, I want the Raiders to win. I was just like, hey, I just want to see a good game. If the Cowboys get it done, cool. I picked them. I've got them on my football pool sheet. I got them as my sole survivor pick. Great. If they lose, I could care less. I don't like the Cowboys. And so it wouldn't have mattered to me. I just wanted to see a good game, especially after the debacle we got on the first game with the Lions and the Packers. I just wanted to see a good game. And I knew by the Cowboys fumbling the opening kickoff, they were going to ensure that, because the only way this isn't a good game is if the Cowboys blow the Oakland Raiders out. The Raiders aren't coming into Dallas and dropping the hammer down on the Cowboys and walking out of here with a 17-point win. The Raiders aren't good enough to do that. So the only way this game is a blowout is if the Cowboys come and dominate from start to finish. Well, that fumble ensured that they weren't going to dominate this game from start to finish. What that fumble and touchdown ensured was that the Raiders were going to gain confidence and play some good football for at least a half. And that's exactly how I thought this would play out. I said, you're in trouble, Dad. And I call my dad Boss. I said, hey, Boss, you're in trouble now. This game is going to be entertaining for at least a half. You've given the Raiders something that they didn't have an abundance of when they entered this game, and that's confidence. And so that 7-0 lead kind of blossomed into something more. Even though the Raiders weren't scoring points, even though the Cowboys weren't doing anything, you can see that the Raiders had some quiet confidence bubbling underneath the surface after that touchdown, that gift they got. And so the Raiders defense started to play ball. They were getting off the field 3 and outs, and they were getting stops. They were getting pressure on Romo. They sacked him early in this game. They also had him, and the officials were sleeping in this game. DeMarcus Ware was held on a couple of occasions. You also had a illegal touching. Tony Romo got pressured by the Raiders defense. He throws the football, does an Eli Manning no-look pass, hits his own offensive lineman in the back of the helmet with the football. That's illegal touching. That should have been a penalty. There was a intentional grounding on a play where Tony Romo gets rid of the football under the pressure of the Raiders, and he throws to absolutely no one. Out of bounds, should have been intentional grounding. The officials were sleeping in this game early on, but nonetheless, the Cowboys gave the Raiders a gift at the beginning of this game with that touchdown on the opening kickoff. The Raiders gave that gift right on back. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the turnover in the National Football League. And the Raiders gave it right back to the Cowboys. They had a young guy in there. His name escapes me right now, but his second game as a Raider, he was just called up from the practice squad, made active. His first game returning punts and kickoffs. He was the one that recovered the fumble on the opening kickoff and scored a touchdown. And he fair caught the ball at the 5-yard line. That's a no-no, and I'm pretty sure the special teams coach will get in his ear and say, hey, young fella, you can't catch that one. You got to let that one bounce. If it's down at the 2-yard line, then you tip your cap to the Cowboys special teams unit and you move on. But you can't catch that football at the 5-yard line. So that set off a chain of events that saw the Cowboys force a fumble, or the Raiders fumble it themselves. Looked like Wisniewski got the football to Matt McGloin. It didn't look like there was any hiccup there. It looked like McGloin just came out too fast without the ball. But even after the fumble, the Raiders still should have recovered. Rashad Jennings had a chance to just fall on the ball. And he made a monumental mistake, one that many football players make, especially on the defensive side. You'll see guys all the time trying to pick up the ball when they just need to fall on it. And this was one of those cases where, hey, Rashard, where are you going? Let me ask you this. Where are you going? Suppose you pick this football up cleanly. Where are you going? You're at the 3-yard line. There are about 5 Cowboy defenders waiting for you to pick this football up. Where are you going? That's my question. So, consciously, you need to make the decision. What's more important? Me picking up the ball and getting a -2 on the play, or me just falling on the football and making sure that we avert a disaster and don't turn it over at our own 3-yard line? Which one's more important? Me scooping it up and losing 2 yards, or me falling on the football and making sure we retain possession? I think that's a pretty easy one. Retain possession, get a -2. Retain possession. I think it's pretty simple. You dive on the football and retain possession. Well, he decided he wanted to be He-Man and pick the football up. It got knocked out of his hands. Cowboys recover on the 2-yard line. Next play, after the fumble, you got their running back who had 3 touchdowns on the day, DeMarco Murray, walking into the end zone. And to me, that was a shame because this Raiders defense had played so well up until that point. They didn't deserve to give up a touchdown. But again, the turnover, the gift that keeps on giving. Cowboys gave them one earlier. Now it was the Raiders' turn to give it right back. 7-7 in this game. And really, the Raiders had dominated up until that point. And now it's a tie ball game. But the Raiders used that fumble to kind of propel them to just get back on track. After the fumble, the Raiders take the football, move it down the field. Matt McGloin was razor sharp early in this game. I was thoroughly impressed. He looked much like the guy we saw in Houston, not so much the guy we saw against Tennessee. And again, he wasn't bad against Tennessee. He just wasn't dynamic like he was against Houston. Well, he was dynamic in his first half against the Cowboys. He picked up his game after that turnover that knotted the game up at 7. He started hitting guys, and he was giving guys an opportunity to go up and make plays. He gave Rod Streeter an opportunity to go up and get a ball that he came down with. He gave Andre Holmes, who had a career day in this game against the Cowboys, his former team, he gave him a couple of opportunities to make some plays, and Andre Holmes did do exactly that as he caught a football and got down to the 1-yard line. It was first ruled a touchdown on the field. Then replay overturns it, and he was down at the 1. Raiders were 3rd and goal after that play. They run a beautiful play. They come out pre-snap, formation shifts. They got Jennings out in the slot. He comes in motion. They give him a handoff, and he runs it sweep-wise outside off of a Marcel Reese leading block, gets into the end zone. It's 14-7, Oakland. Great possession and drive by the Raiders. Matt McGloin was sharp on that possession, and he was throwing some darts. He had Michael Rivera on a couple of passes that had to be where they were. One of those passes on the next possession to Michael Rivera on a out on 3rd down. You can't throw it any better than that. I mean, the defender, Jeff Heath, was draped all over Michael Rivera, and he still got it in there. Just a beautiful throw. And some of these throws were under duress. I mean, one throw on a corner route to Streeter right by the sidelines, he dropped it in a bucket, and Streeter was able to get, both feet and a knee down. He couldn't even step into that throw. Somehow he got it out of there. And DeMarcus Ware was coming around the corner on a couple of throws. He got it out of his hands quickly. On that final drive for the Raiders before the half, not counting the one where they took a knee to end the half, he was 4 of 4 on 3rd downs, razor sharp, and he capped that drive off with a touchdown pass, and he was just phenomenal. Excuse me. That drive was capped off by Rashard Jennings' 1-yard TD plunge after Rashard had a grown man conversion on 3rd and 2 to get it down to the 1. He walks into the end zone on the first play after the 2-minute warning. Raiders are up 21-7 at that point. Raiders were dominating in this first half, but you knew that this Raiders team, and I talked to my buddy, I talked to my dad, I told my dad, once the Raiders got to 21, they were done scoring. I thought they were done for the day because the Raiders don't score over 21 too often. This is a team that will score, 20, 21 points. But generally speaking, the Raiders are a 17, 19, 20, 21 team. They might get frisky and score 24, but the Raiders don't score over 21 points that often. And I said, man, they're done scoring for the day. They're done scoring for the day. And so Now it's up to the Cowboys to start getting some things done. And right before the half, don't you know it, Cowboys drive down the field. Romo is sharp on that drive. He starts finding. It was funny because early in this game, no Des Bryant, no Jason Witten. It was all Terrence Williams and Cole Beasley. And so they were struggling offensively. In the run game, couldn't get off the ground. Raiders were stopping the run. But on that drive right before the half, Miles Austin, Jason Witten, even Des Bryant, they all got involved in the action. They end up getting down the field, and they get in the end zone on a DeMarco Murray draw. I thought the Raiders let their guard down, and they went to this prevent defense. They had been aggressive all first half, and right when the Cowboys started to get into that no huddle, they wanted to go soft and go prevent, and they stopped doing what got them that 21-7 lead, which is coming after Tony Romo. Keep in mind, if not for the fumble down by the end zone, the Cowboys don't have any points in this game, and it was because the Raiders were applying pressure to Tony Romo, making him uncomfortable. And instead, they dropped back into this soft coverage, gave the Cowboys all kinds of avenues to throw the football to, and Tony picked them apart, got them down close to the end zone. They had one timeout remaining. I thought the Raiders needed to come up and play a little bit more aggressive to stop the run and make Tony throw it into the end zone. He hands it off on a draw. DeMarco Murray walks into the end zone. It's 14-21 going into the half. And at that point, I knew the Raiders are going to get caught. And I told my dad, once you get even, you're leaving. And Raiders come out, second half, get the football. And it's like it was night and day for the Raiders. And that's what happens to bad teams. When you're not a good football team, you fail to play a complete game of football. You might have a stellar first half. Your second half is the direct opposite of what you did in the first half. Or your first half might be abysmal. Your second half is great, but by that time, you've dug yourself a 17-point hole, and you can't quite dig yourself out of that hole, and you lose the football game. And so the Raiders, classic sign of a subpar football team. Dominant first half, second half, they can't get a first down. They can't sustain offense. The Cowboys dominate that second half. Tony Romo gets hot. The running game starts to pick up. Dunbar comes into the game, and I thought that was the changing point in this game for the Cowboys. I mean, Dunbar comes in, and he just started going off. Lance Dunbar was a huge catalyst for this running game. And you can see the Raiders defensively starting to wear down in the second half. They couldn't tackle. They weren't getting in their run fits correctly. They weren't defending the pass as well. They weren't getting any pressure on Tony Romo. And this all stemmed from the lack of consistency on offense. They weren't sustaining drives, and they were getting off the field 3 and outs, giving the football back to the Cowboys, and they were wearing this Oakland Raiders defense down. Usama Young was injured, and you also lost Mike Jenkins in this game. Tracy Porter was in and out with some injuries, so you were starting to fall apart in your secondary. Once you start seeing Chimney Chekwa in the game, you know it's getting bad in Oakland in the secondary. And so it just started to all fall apart. Cowboys go down the field. They get another rushing touchdown from DeMarco Murray. Then they get a Des Bryant touchdown catch, and they get a field goal late to put this one out of reach in the waning seconds of the game to make it a 10-point lead. Raiders drive back down the field, their most impressive drive of the second half, which tells you all you need to know that it really fell apart. They get down the field. They settle for a Sebastian Janikowski field goal because they know they need 2 scores. They go for the onside kick, which was a comical attempt at a field goal, or excuse me, an onside kick. I mean, you get 3 opportunities essentially. The first one, he puts it on the tee, and he kicks it the opposite direction, trying to fool them. But they said that the Cowboys called timeout. So you get another opportunity to kick it. So he changes his scheme on how he wants to do it. He doesn't put the football completely on the tee, and he tries to kick it. Then they say the ball was not marked for play yet, so they weren't ready. So he gets to kick it again. This time he lays it flat on the ground and kicks it, and it doesn't even go 10 yards. It's easily recovered. There was no hop, no bounce, no anything to it. It was a feeble attempt at an onside kick, recovered by Jeff Heath, and the Cowboys, they take the knees. They win the football game 31-24, do the Dallas Cowboys. Impressive come-from-behind victory by Dallas again. I knew the Raiders were done scoring when they got to 21. They were able to tackle on a late field goal to try to make it interesting. But this Raiders team has a long way to go. But I tell you what, Matt McGloin was extremely efficient and solid in that first half. In the second half, I thought the Raiders tried to do too much. There were several opportunities for them to pick up third and shorts, and they just kept going down the field. Matt McGloin kept pushing the ball down the field, And I think the success that they had in the first half really made it easy for them to take shots down the field in the second half. But again, if it's 3rd and 4, pick up the first down. Pick up 5 yards, move the sticks. Then you can try to push the ball down the field. Instead, on 3rd and 4, they were going down the field. Then they get a drive where they take it all the way down the field. And they had an opportunity to get points. And you got to know your personnel. And this was the only mistake that I thought Matt McGloin made in this game. The only egregious mistake. Let's just call it that. You can't throw a jump ball in the end zone to the smallest receiver on your team and expect him to go up and make a play. You can't throw a fade route in the corner of the end zone to Jacoby Ford. Can't happen. You gotta know your personnel. You want to throw a jump ball up? Let it be Rod Streeter. Let it be Andre Holmes. It can't be Jacoby Ford. Can't be Jacoby Ford. At 5'8", he's not going up and making a play for you. It's not happening. This isn't 2010 when he had that breakout year, or 2011 or whatever it was. You can't throw that jump ball, and he's got to know that. I'm pretty sure the coaching staff will tell him, hey, he had one-on-one coverage. You made the right read, but that's not the right throw. That's either got to be a back shoulder throw or you just don't throw that football. Again, you got to know your personnel and know who you're throwing the football to. And so that was picked off by Brandon Carr in the end zone. And really, that was a last-ditch effort for the Raiders. If they get a field goal there, this is a different ballgame. Maybe the outcome is different. I don't think they win this game, but it's a different football game for sure. Because that stops the bleeding, that gets you on the scoreboard in the second half. It's a different game. Instead, you turn it over. Cowboys continue with the momentum that they had. They go down. They milk the clock after that interception. Essentially run their 4-minute offense, bleed the clock, pick up a lot of first downs, stop the drive at about the 2 or the 3 yard line, force a field goal, do the Raiders. But again, that gives you a 10-point lead with under 2 minutes to go. The game's essentially over at that point. No timeouts left for the Raiders that they had to use it on that possession. So that interception changed the face of the game. And again, know your personnel, know who you're throwing the football to, know the situation, and again, get points in that position. You cannot turn it over there, and he did. So I thought Matt McGloin played well. Still not worthy of the nickname yet, so I won't give it to him. But Matt McGloin, I thought he played well enough in this game, especially in the first half. I thought the second half, it was a tale of two halves for the Raiders. They did not play well. The defense got worn down because the offense wasn't able to sustain offense and stay on the field and give them a chance to catch their breath. And so they were worn down by the Dallas Cowboys run game. I thought Lance Dunbar came in and gave the Cowboys rushing attack a huge spark. And after he gave them that spark, then DeMarco Murray started to find space. But he had 3 rushing touchdowns on the day. At one point, DeMarco Murray had 11 carries, 27 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he was not getting it done on the ground. But when they got, in the red zone near the goal line, he was finding a way in. But the Raiders were doing a great job of bottling him and the Cowboys rushing attack up until Lance Dunbar came in, gave them a spark, and then things started to open up. They started to wear down, and the Cowboys started to take advantage. They get it done, 31-24, do the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So I am correct again on my Soul Survivor pick. So I'm back on track where I'm supposed to be. I feel good. I'm 2 for 2 on Thanksgiving. I called all home teams. I said that Detroit, Dallas, and Baltimore were going to get it done. So now we got to go to that nightcap and see how that turned out. But the Cowboys got it done. I expected them to. They could not afford to lose this game at home to the Raiders. And they found a way to scratch claw, come back, and get it done. They go to 7-5. And now that's a huge victory because, again, 11 days off between their next game. So essentially you're looking at a mini bye week. You get an extra day because it's a Monday night football game. You got to go on the road to Soldier Field to take on the Bears. And so we'll see how that all turns out. We'll see if Sean Lee is back for that game. But big win for the Cowboys. If you're the Raiders, this all but sealed your fate in 2013 because you dropped that game to Tennessee at home. That was a backbreaker. But you still were in the midst of the race in the AFC at 4-7. Now at 4-8 with this loss, you're all but done. You probably can kiss your 2013 playoff hopes goodbye. But again, it's all about finding out who's going to be around next season. And maybe, just maybe, you still need to see more. And I think Matt McGloin has done enough in the last 3 weeks to solidify himself as the starter for the remaining games of this season. I feel like Matt McGloin has done enough to finish having his audition for these final 4 games. So I expect him to start the remainder of the season, barring any injuries. And we'll find out if, in fact, he's good enough for the Raiders to bypass a quarterback in that first round of the draft next season. I don't know. I like this guy a lot. I still need to see more. But if you're the Raiders, you have so many pressing issues. If you could cross off quarterback as one of the ones at the top of the list and maybe slide quarterback down to maybe the 3rd or the 4th round, just maybe, and maybe, just maybe, you can go and get yourself an elite pass rusher or an elite weapon for McGloin to throw to. Who knows? But if you can take quarterback and slide it down the list, you got to feel good about that. So we'll see how the Raiders approach these final 4 games. For the Cowboys, big win. Chicago's next up on the docket. You got some time to lick your wounds. Hopefully you're healthy and you can go into that Monday night game with a lot of confidence, a lot of healthy bodies, and with a lot riding on the line, especially now that you get to watch the Cardinals and the Eagles go at it on Sunday to see if you'll be in sole possession of first or will you be sharing that lead with the Philadelphia Eagles come week number 14. So that's going to do it for this installment of In the Lab Room. Raiders drop to 4-8. Cowboys go to 7-5. I thank you for joining me. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. Thank you for joining me. I've got one more game to break down. See you in a bit.